and welcome to another episode of The Writing Finger. My name is Subramani. I'm your host. And joining us today is my fellow reader in crime, I should say, today, and the author, Ashwin Karthik. And I mentioned about reader in crime because today we're going to talk about true crime, especially the wake of murder crime. Suchana said, to give you a background, is a CEO of an artificial intelligence company. She took her son to Goa, uh, and then she allegedly smothered him to death in a hotel room. Um, because again, the police investigations are showing that she is unhappy that the court verdicts have gone in favor of her husband, giving him the visitation rights to her son. Stunning and shocking as it may be, there are several crimes like that, and they are very, very well captured in the form of books, um, which true crime junkies are bound to go back to. I, for one, I'm a big fan of true crime, and there are lots of books that we would like to discuss in this episode. So I want to go to Ashwin now and ask him, what is your favorite true crime book, or how did you get hooked to true crime in the first place, Ashwin?
Well, Subramani, true crime, the word itself sends, you know, chills down anybody's spine, and the 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 case that you mentioned, Sushila said, allegedly smuggling her own son to death, is you know, shocking and um, uh, it's so unimaginable to think that a mother can do that to her own son, but that it has happened. Um, and I feel before I answer your question, I feel that I mean, crime has a lot of its knots to tie to a person's mental status. Unimaginable to think that a mother, right, the situations that they go through, the conditions they live in, or maybe their upbringing, there are a lot of factors that lead one to actually commit a certain crime. But let's not go that direction now. Coming back to your question, of what attracted me to read to true crime was was a very popular movie
Yeah.
that was made in the early 2000s, maybe 2001 or 2, and the character was played by none other than Leonardo DiCaprio, and
Okay.
what attracted me to read to true crime. By now,
I
you
think that there
might
can't be.
have
Yeah.
you might have guessed the movie also, which is Catch Me If You Can. And the character Leonardo plays, the real name is Frank Abagnale, who was a con artist
Yes.
back in the US in, I guess, 1970s, where he, you know, he impersonated pilots, doctors, lawyers, and I don't think he left out any particular profession, and he impersonated people from there from these professions and conned Americans.
Yeah.
And
You know something, Ashwin?
yeah,
This is actually from a book written by the original con artist. His name
yes,
is Frank W. Abagnale,
absolutely
and
correct.
he's kind of masqueraded himself as many things. He co-piloted
Yes,
an aircraft.
yes,
He worked as a
doctor
surgeon, and then he worked
as a
he was
lawyer,
even a lawyer without law license. And if you read, I remember reading the book. The book actually starts with this guy sitting as a co-pilot next to the
correct,
actual pilot, and then after a brief conversation, the pilot says, come on, the aircraft is all yours, because this guy said that he's actually a chief pilot of the Pan Am,
Panam, yeah,
across Atlantic, or something like that. And then the other guy was so impressed that he handed him the thing, and he pulled off a lot of escape attempts. And even in the end, when people wanted to actually circle him and arrest him, he kind of escaped. So this is definitely one of the most fascinating crime books. If you don't particularly like the blood and gore, the gunshots and the killings, this is the book for you, because this guy is actually using his mind power to uh, to con the system. So he's done it very
yeah.
successfully as well.
And the most interesting, fact about the story and
Yep.
actually the case itself is that Frank ended up becoming part of the FBI itself because the FBI felt that there cannot be any other better person to actually help them crack such financial crimes, and they
Yes.
hired him as a FBI agent.
He became a kind of an ethical, a kind of a
Ethical,
supporter, ethical
correct.
hacker, you could say,
Yes,
helping the
yes,
system find out the fraudsters.
yeah. So the way that book has been written and the movie that was made, that was actually my trigger to get attracted to true crime cases.
Definitely. I would definitely say that the book that absolutely captivated my attention. There are a couple of books I would say. One, of course, is a very, very famous book by a very famous author called In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. Truman Capote is known for his brilliant craftsmanship as a writer, and his book, Breakfast at Tiffany's, is very famous. It's a fictional, it's a kind of a novella. But In Cold Blood is actually a book that he kind of investigated and wrote about a killing that happened in Colorado, where a family, has been totally massacred in one night, and the whole book is about that, and how two people, very unassuming, uh, you know, especially one of them, he kind of sounds like your next door neighbor, who kind of probably, not even a next door neighbor, somebody who looks very, uh, very, very disarmingly simple, and not comes across as somebody who's a killer, who's capable of this gruesome crime, but they just, something gets on them, and they just go killing this family. And then he details the story of the killing, and what happens in the aftermath of the killing. This is a fantastic book, and you should read this book for the kind of writing that it presents. That's number one. Number two is a much more recent one by an author called Michelle McNamara, a book called I'll Be Gone in the Dark. This concerns, this is how the this is how the recent, true crime junkies are kind of operating. This is the space that she describes here. uh, she's obsessed for a long time about this guy called the Golden State Killer. That is, she names him as a Golden State Killer because nobody knew his real identity. This guy goes on a a rape and killing spree from the early 70s till the mid 80s across in a small region in California. Uh, and then, she gets obsessed because, in the United States and I think probably rest of the world, there are two, uh, divisions to how to the forensics itself. See, earlier, the forensics used to be the blood samples, comparison of the blood samples, so on and so forth, the fingerprinting and so on. But once the DNA samples started to kind of happen, once they started to compare the DNA samples and match them with the criminals, the conviction records have gone up. So between these two periods, there are people who operated, and then the internet came about. So all those who are obsessing about a particular crime started to gather on the internet. They started discussing it as a community, and if one of them get a clue, he'll just pass it on to others, and then they kind of have a discussion about it. It is a very exciting book. Unfortunately, before she could complete the book, Michelle McNamara, you know, dies, and it gets completed by one of her, fellow investigators in this case. And her investigation has actually helped identify the real criminal who did it much later. I think if I'm not wrong, in the 2000, in 2012, 13, 14, about that time, the guy was actually found and convicted for the crimes that he committed. So I would say that this is one of the most extraordinary true crime books that I have ever read.
Most definitely. But yeah, when you talk about these gruesome crimes that plagued America, I also would like to mention one of the. No, I mean, I would like to mention that India is not new to such true crimes, right?
Yeah,
India
absolutely.
has her own fair share of true crimes, and I would like to mention one of the very gruesome cases in the national capital itself, where this was probably in the first part of 2000, between 2005 and 2010, if I remember right. And there was this gang who would sneak into the houses of rich and old couples. They would recce the location and find out whether
Yeah,
there were only two aged people and how they lived their life. They studied their lifestyle for a couple of weeks, and then they would someday in the night sneak in, and loot all the um, precious things, the money and everything.
yep,
They would sumptuously feed on the food leftovers in the fridge, drink alcohol, and then they would very gruesomely kill the couple and leave the house. So, and the whole Delhi was actually,
hmm
um, was so scared in those years, and this case was recently televised. They made a web series, and
web series
it
out of
is
it. Oh,
on
okay.
Netflix. And the way the police solve the case is very interesting. But people might want to, if they are okay to watch a bit, you know, a bit of blood and every bloodshed on their web series, then it's a
Yeah.
very interesting case to understand.
The other book that I want to discuss, there are two books that I want to discuss in the Indian context.
Mm,
One, of course, is a book called Arushi. by a journalist who kind of covered the case. So Arushi is a book about the whole incident of the 13-year-old who was murdered inside her house, who was found murdered, but nobody knew. Uh, there was a lot of people who get blamed in the whole thing. There was a botched up investigation. It The whole thing is a tragedy, and also a kind of a proof that how sometimes our system can be inefficient, and especially in finding the real criminals in a case like this. It's a very tragic case that kind of shook the whole nation. So that's a wonderful. And the other book, of course, is another favorite of mine. It's called Good Girls by an author called Sonia Falero, and she writes about if you remember, there was a killing of two teenage girls in UP, where their bodies were found hanging from the mango a tree in the mango orchard, and then again the same thing. Uh, Initially there was an outrage, and then it was told that when they kind of went early morning to attend to the nature's call, they were raped and murdered. And Sonia Falero puts out the whole truth of how the whole case has been taken out of proportion. Everybody sort of had a their own interpretation about the whole thing, and how the community themselves, how people who concerned with these two girls and the accused, how they kind of tried to sort of manipulate it to kind of portray their own story. So this is a very, very tragic book, but this is a one that reflects the reality of India. So these are the other two books that I'd like to recommend as far as true crime is concerned. Of course, true crime is a very interesting genre. I think all of you should sort of go and explore it. And if you have already explored, you might like to tell us what uh, the kind of books that you have read and enjoyed. Uh, put it in the comment. I'd be very happy to read. And I hope you all had a fantastic New Year and a wonderful Shankranti slash Pongal slash the Uttarayan Punyakal. Um, so thank you very much, and you all have a fantastic reading week. Until
So thank you everyone watching and listening. We will see you soon in the next podcast. Till then, keep reading, keep yourself safe, and try to pen your thoughts. See you soon. Thank you. Bye bye.